Good evening and welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Tonight, a big diplomatic win for India as China backs off and the standoff at Doklam comes to an end. But will China hold up its end of the bargain? That's what we'll talk about tonight. And the Dera chief Gurmeet Singh gets 20 years in jail for the rape of 2 women. Has justice finally been done? We'll talk about that in about 30 minutes from now. But first, the big story today, after a more than 2-month-long standoff at the border, one of the worst in decades, India and China ended the Doklam face-off today with both sides withdrawing their troops. Sources have told NDTV that the Chinese have also stopped the construction of a controversial road in the area, which was the main point of the dispute. As the news broke, though, China had a very different spin on it, telling reporters that only Indian troops had retreated, not explicitly saying anything on their troops, though that's not entirely unexpected since the Chinese have had to back off after weeks of sharp rhetoric. The question is, will China hold up its end of the bargain? Joining us here in the studio tonight, we have with us Mr. Jaydev Ranade, President of the Centre for China Analysis and Strategy, Mr. Sheshadri Chari, member of the BJP and Strategic Affairs Analyst, Dhruv Jaishankar from the Brookings Institution, Dr. Abhishek Singhvi of the Congress Party joins us this evening, and we have Defence Analyst Ajay Shukla here in the studio with us as well. Let me first, take this question to you, Dhruv. Today, all of us who cover the MEA have been splitting hairs about the various statements that have been issued from the Indian side, from the Chinese side. One of the questions that has often been asked is, why hasn't the word mutual disengagement been used? Forget the Chinese side, don't expect them to say it, but even by the Ministry of External Affairs.
I'm not the person to answer that question. I do think, though, what we have seen with the India initially putting out a statement, China then hearing China's statement, and then we saw a clarification subsequently from the Indian side, which provided a little bit more detail. I think this was clearly quite carefully choreographed by both sides to provide a face-saving measure for both sides. It's fine for China to claim this as a win, but I think the facts on the ground speak for themselves. And again, more details will emerge about what exactly those facts on the ground are. But what does seem clear is that India was in a position where it had some natural advantages in this particular sector. You had an upcoming BRICS summit, which you also had a National Party Congress, and I think others on this panel are better prepared to speak about that. So this was taking on a domestic political dimension in China too, and so for all of these reasons, it was quite clear that China wanted to bring this to an early resolution, and it was just figuring out the modalities of it that was really what it was.
Ajay, do you agree with that? What is your information about what's happening at the ground? And you maintained from day one that India did the right thing in the position that it took in Doklam, and that this, in fact, was going to be very different from the previous border standoffs that we've seen.
Well, it's clear, and it was clear all through the negotiation process and the dialogue that took place in the back channels, that the challenge was going to be how to allow China to climb back from the very hard and rigid position it had taken without losing face beyond an acceptable degree. And it was very skillfully done. This is diplomatically worded beautifully. The two statements were released at the same time. The Chinese statement said China will continue to exercise sovereignty, which could mean road building, which could mean patrolling, but they did not specify anything. But behind the channels, behind the agreement, is a clear understanding that the disengagement would be mutual, and it would be done on the condition that China does not road build any longer. So it has been, whichever way you slice it, a clear victory for India. And the reason for that victory, and the reason why I was so optimistic about it happening, was that in this particular sector in Sikkim, India calls all the shots, India holds all the strong positions, India holds the high ground, and China is not in a position to use force.
If we wanted to, we could have actually, technically speaking, sat there for years, right?
We could have done that.
And that would have been much harder for the Chinese. So, Mr. Chari, if you could put that into perspective for us, why it is important diplomatically for statements to be worded the way that they are? When people ask us on Twitter and otherwise, why are there not more direct statements? Why doesn't each side just say that both sides have disengaged mutually? Why is it important to leave it vague? As Ajay said, it's really about keeping face so that each side, in a sense, can claim victory.
No, I think the wording of the statement by the MEA is very clear and very correct in the given circumstances. In fact, in one of the articles that I wrote for NDTV.com, I had specifically said that also, that it will be in the best interest of India if New Delhi adopts a policy of wait and watch rather than enter into a jingoistic diatribe. So, jingoism was not going to help as far as this particular standoff was concerned. So, we needed time to look into the facts and circumstances which forced China to do this. So, we had in fact, we knew probably at some stage of the standoff, especially when two nuclear powers, the armies of two nuclear powers at the highest altitude war theater were throwing stones at each other, which means both were wanting to look at a situation whereby the de-escalation will start and then there will be an exit route for China. It was very important for India to give an exit route for China for a safe withdrawal. Otherwise, it would have probably been an ego clash between these two powers. And then moreover, if Prime Minister Modi had not gone to BRICS summit, it would have created a huge embarrassment for China, and probably like India boycotting the SAARC meeting and the SAARC meeting not getting at all of this mark, a similar situation could have happened for BRICS also. Probably BRICS would not have happened. So, there were so many factors.
That never was really on the table.
No, it was not on the table, but these are all certain considerations that work at the back of the mind of these
of the other side.
On the other side mainly. And moreover, we should not forget that the PLA is not the same PLA that was before. So, there are a lot of
wheels within wheels.
Wheels within wheels, and then there are other issues that are troubling the present political establishment.
I want to talk about that as well in some detail a little later. Dr. Abhishek Singhvi, would the Congress compliment the government for the way it has handled China? I know there's often criticism, but when this standoff actually began, the Congress was very supportive of the government's position. Would you say that under the circumstances, given the kind of rhetoric we saw from the Chinese side day after day for weeks and weeks, that the Indian government handled it pretty well at the end of the day?
Nidhi, I think this is a very, very serious matter and we have to hasten cautiously and slowly. By the way, Nidhi, you'll have to do something about a very strong echo. I like the sound of my voice, but not that much. I'm hearing it too much. So there's a huge echo. I mean, I can't speak.
All right, let me fix that and get back to you. Give me 30 seconds. I apologize for that. We'll just get back to you and fix that. Jaidev Ranade, your first assessment of this, you were very worried. I remember when all of this happened, you emphasized again and again how serious this situation is. How do you think we handled it? And the key question I'm asking is are the Chinese going to hold up their end of the bargain? Can we trust them that that they're saying we're not going to construct the road now, but that they won't come back later or strike somewhere else?
Well, I was certainly concerned about the situation, and I think there were times when it did become somewhat serious. Having said that, let me also say that the fact that we stood firm and we didn't yield ground went a long way in bringing about this present diffusing of the situation. But I have my doubts about the Chinese holding up, as you said, their end of the bargain. So far, their track record has been rather shifty, if I may say. They have signed agreements with us, which they have reneged on, one being Sikkim, the other being about settlement of agreement on the settled populations not being disturbed. So, we will have to wait and watch what they do. Even in the case of Doklam, in 2012, there was an agreement that there will be no road building and there will be no effort to change the status quo. The Chinese unilaterally violated that. So, I think the Chinese would be, if I may say, if I may venture to suggest, they'd be smarting at what has happened, particularly the PLA, and they will wait to try and, shall I say, retrieve their
lost pride
at a time which is opportune for them. So, I think we'll have to be cautious, but still I would welcome the fact that we have been able to achieve this diffusing of tension.
Okay, so you strike that note of caution. Abhishek Singhvi, you were striking a note of caution as well. Why was that?
Nidhi, first of all, let me make it clear that the Congress party and the whole nation is at one, where matters of national security are concerned, where our safety is involved, and where China is involved. Number two, I think I and my party I represent would be the happiest if this is a permanent solution to the Doklam issue. I don't think it is right to rejoice so much so early on. It might be premature rejoicing. Let us see how it turns out on the ground. There are 3 or 4 reasons why I say it. First and foremost, the Chinese statement suggests far greater unilateralism of Indian withdrawal than the bilateralism that we are given to understand. Now, I don't go on the mere semantics. I am happy to give China and India a face saver if actually the situation is diffused. But Chinese statements vary from our version of what is agreed upon. Number two, I do believe that the government, and I hope that the government will take us into confidence at a time and a place of their choosing, as apparently they did after a long gap in the beginning of the Doklam issue, because this would be in the interests of everyone if the opposition is kept informed, and if they satisfy us, I am sure we will be very happy in rejoicing. But there are 2 points which are of concern, Nidhi. One is that the Chinese are known to have been very, very vacillating, very, very changing about their stands. I don't think a trust factor can be attributed to what might well be, and I am not saying it is, the government knows better, merely a temporary papering over to facilitate the BRICS visit. I just hope that that is not the narrow, short-term, very short-term point. And lastly, I am a bit worried that Prime Minister Modi's government, on its own level, very good to have close, big, quick relations with US. But some people believe that he is rushing too fast into US arms, because clearly what I have heard in the last 6 months from Russia about Pakistan is unprecedented. Russia has not spoken so much in favor of Pakistan on Afghanistan and Pakistan for last 60, 70 years. Now, with the Chinese threat looming large, I don't think we can rely on new allies, at least for military adventures like the US, which are 10,000 kilometers away.
Okay, so let
we
me
certainly
take both,
can't even
let me
weaken
take
or
both the
dilute, much
points
less
that you
jettison
raised.
our old allies.
Let
I
me-
am concerned with the larger geopolitics of it.
Yeah.
I just hope and trust that China is not doing a temporary handshake job. That's all.